Factom. And Paul is going to talk to us today about the killer applications we will see on blockchains in 2018. Please welcome Paul SnoW.
Good afternoon. I was afraid nobody would find the closet, but guys, if someone back there has found my missing shoe, I would appreciate it. If it doesn't feel like a sardine can, it's not a Bitcoin conference. All right, guys. So what we're going to talk about is what I believe are going to be the killer applications for 2018. Now, I am not really talking about where to invest your money. So if there's anybody that'll be left, I don't see anybody leaving. Okay, great. So I'm going to talk about what I think are going to be the killer applications in 2018. And if I would press the right button, it would go forward. The real interesting thing about the blockchain is that we trust paper because it's hard to change atoms, okay? If somebody has put something on a piece of paper and it's in a warehouse and it's also been sent to a lawyer and you have it in your filing cabinet, it's very, very hard to go and change those atoms, right? It's very hard to go change the signatures and forge. Forgeries are caught two ways. One, it doesn't look real, and two, somebody else has another copy and then they have to decide which one's right, okay? So atoms are hard to change. Bits are really, really easy to change. If you go into a system of record, I hate to ask if we can close that. Is there any way we can close the door? Anyway, if you get inside the system of record and you change the addresses on a record or you change the amounts on a record, then you change the data and everybody believes it. And so you've changed that. So bits are too easy to change until we had a blockchain. Once we have a blockchain, we can actually create bits that are really, really hard to change. And of course, that's what we're doing at Factom. And I believe that 2018 is going to be the year of trustworthy bits. Now, just because we can trust the bits, that doesn't really tell me what the application is going to be, but it does tell me what the basis is. Suddenly, there are things that can be worldwide, and we can trust them. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you some observations about this when I get to some of the 2018 killer apps. The 2017 number one killer app of 2017, CryptoKitties. Okay? Because CryptoKitties. What was the first killer app of Bitcoin? How about Satoshi Dice? Does anybody remember Satoshi Dice? The first cryptographically provable fair gambling game. And it was simple. You flipped some dice and you won or you lost. And it made Eric Voorhees a lot of money. CryptoKitties is kind of similar that way. ICOs is the number, you could argue. In terms of dollar value, okay, CryptoKitties wins. But ICOs have done an amazing thing. And so that was our number two. And number three for 2017, how do you beat $20,000 Bitcoins? Okay? And seriously, would we all be here if we didn't have $20,000 Bitcoins in 2017? Come on. You can say you would be here, but I've run these conferences. I know better. Okay. What are the characteristics of the killer application in 2018? There are going to be a number of things. One, if you can do it without a blockchain, it's probably not going to be your killer app. Okay? If The application doesn't require coordination between a whole bunch of parties. Probably not going to be a killer app, at least a few parties. We're going to be talking about stuff that really matters to business. Okay? And so I do think, when I say business, you know, it's business or it's your business, right? I'm not going to say it's actually literally corporations doing something, but it's going to be a business of some sort. We're going to have to reduce risk, and we're going to have to provide some sort of reasonable value to the people participating. So my 3 categories that I'm going to suggest for you today, at least categories around which these killer apps are going to be in. Number 1, mortgage and real estate. And I'm going to tell you why. Just give me a second. And the second one is going to be payment rails. And the third is going to be settlements. Settlements between parties. And these, or some form of them, are going to be our killer apps. Now, mortgage and real estate, the reason that it's ripe for the blockchain is there is no entrenched competitor to the blockchain. Why? Because there really hasn't been any interesting innovation. We are currently doing our mortgages today pretty much the way we did forever and ever before. And where we have innovated by putting computers, we have built simulations that very accurately implement what we did in 1940. Okay? This follows slowly the massive innovation that we've seen in banking and finance, where we now have a computer chip on our card, just like the Europeans had just 10 short years ago. So these areas of massive, massive lack of innovation are ripe for the blockchain to make big changes. Now I'm just gonna go on a riff here. They're gonna make big changes for 2 reasons. 1, because there hasn't been any innovation, and 2, because the blockchain provides a real reason and a real ability to do something that they couldn't do before. And then the third one of the 2 reasons is it's a great excuse. They know they need to do something. And before they went to management, we need to do something, and management said, well, it's good enough, we're making money. Now they get to say, on management, we need to do something, and management says it's good enough. And he said, but blockchain, oh, I saw Kodak. Yeah, we need that 30%. Kodak stepped on stage, they said blockchain, stock 30% up. Boom. Okay? You need audit trails, you need to coordinate between parties over time, you have this lack of innovation. This is why real estate is prime for innovation in 2018. Payment rails. We have to be able to buy coffee. I'm sorry, I know that a lot of people think it's just store value. We're going to have to buy coffee, all right? Because if you didn't have coffee today, you wouldn't be awake now. Coffee is how we write software. We have 3 possibilities. We have Lightning, at least 3 main ones that I'm looking at. We have Lightning, we have Plasma, and we have DAGs. Now, oh, okay, DAG fan. Yeah, I used to read Dagwood when I was a kid too. It was just, never mind. There were 3 people that laughed. That means there's only 3 people old enough to remember Dagwood. Okay, so Lightning has a severe problem. It's totally illegal. So probably won't show up in 2018. Why is it illegal? Because for it to really work, you have to transfer value between parties. That's called money transmission, and our government has a real problem with it, but it'll work in Wyoming. But did y'all read that? They're passing the laws that are going to make Lightning legal in one state in the United States so the guy that runs the sheep can pay the guy that raises the cows. I was born there. I know what I'm talking about. Okay, plasma. Plasma is a general category of smart contracts that create domains under which transactions can occur off the ledger and can be settled between parties, and you can trust it because the smart contract will punish the party above if it fails to process the transactions and validate the transactions properly. So I'm going to use plasma as a general hand waving towards the whole smart contract scheme of creating transaction pools. Okay? Is everybody fair with that? Easy with that? More or less?
More or less.
More or less. Okay. And DAGs, directed acyclic graphs. Let me say that again slowly. Directed acyclic graphs. So when you go home and your spouse says, well, what did you learn at the Bitcoin conference? You can say, you know, the payments, it's all about directed acyclic graphs. What are those? Well, they don't have cycles, they're directed, and it's graphs. The idea here is that you have code that prevents the double spins by preventing you from cycling the transactions backwards and checking within a neighborhood. Yeah, vaguely. More or less. I like this man because I'm totally lying to you and he's agreeing with me. The whole idea here, though, is in 2018, one of these things is going to get delivered, and that's going to be a killer app. I don't know if it's going to be a huge amount of the money that the applications and wealth and everything inside of Bitcoin, but 2018 is when it begins. Okay? Settlements, audibility, transparency, faster settling times, these are all great, but there's settlements between lots of parties. I could fold this into the whole idea of supply chain management, making sure that you're tracking something as it goes along and tracking the payments, not just the provenance of, the history of the items that are going through the supply chain, but also manage the payments going back and forth. There is a real problem with paying people in Africa. How many banks do you think are at the bottleneck to making any payment in Africa? 2! There are 2 banks in the traditional banking financial system that handle pretty much everything that goes on in Africa. And so that's a bottleneck, and that prevents trade. So if we can create alternate mechanisms of settlement between parties, and we can speed all that up and get the transactions moving, then a whole continent with vast amounts of resources can pick themselves up with their own resources and with their own ingenuity and their own enterprise, and we can seek to make some differences. And by the way, if I go back to mortgage, if we can document property rights worldwide, we will change the world. And the only way you can document property rights in any sort of reasonable way when there's so many interests that are against it is via the blockchain. I encourage all of you to read up on Hernando de Soto and the mystery of capital and some of the things that he's talking about. But I will say this one thing: how does ISIS hold territory in the Middle East? They hold territory by issuing property rights for the informal understanding of property in those areas. It's property rights that lets them hold those territories. If we can document those informal property rights and we can get governments to recognize them, we can push terrorism back. You can't do it with guns. You've got to do it with assuring the population that they can own their stuff and they can make a living. And we can do it with the blockchain when it's failed by the World Bank and it's failed by their governments and it's failed by everything else that's going on. The blockchain can bring peace to the world. And that's Factom, and that's where I see 2018. I see the dawn of a lot of huge and massive changes, and I've kind of given you the layout of how and why I think these are the direction it's going. So I'm open to any questions. Yes, sir.
You mentioned with smart contracts, you can punish someone who's not doing due diligence or doing their job. How does that work in practice?
How does Plasma punish people if they don't manage the subcontracts beneath the contract? You have this smart contract, and there's Ethereum and Solidity, and magic occurs. I'm not really an expert on the smart contracts and exactly how they code them, but more than likely, as I understand it, if you can provide cryptographic proof of malfeasance to the level above, then the level above punishes the level below. Is that correct? More or less?
More or less.
More or less. So it's about the fact that malfeasance always comes with a cryptographic proof of malfeasance in the blockchain space.
Is there kind of currently an expert in that area of smart contracts?
Well, this guy over here is critiquing me pretty good. So, yes, sir. Are you an expert in smart contracts? Anyone in here, this is what I do at my meetup, anyone in here claim to be relatively intelligent on smart contracts, and particularly Plasma? Is there a Plasma guy in the house? Wow. At the Bitcoin Ethereum meetup, we don't have a Plasma expert. You know what? I do have him. The guy's name is Brian Deary, and I work with him. He's our chief scientist, and he explains all this stuff to me. But he's not here. He's working because I'm the CEO. What can I say? So, all right. So I can get an answer to you. Yes, sir.
About the 2018 killer apps,
Yes.
there is many companies that are running very good in that field. In the properties is Propi.
Yes.
In the plasma field, maybe Silica. And in the administration request network,
Yes.
there is many ones very good in the field.
I can't really give you I didn't promise you a roadmap of the actual field or categories. I know of one group that's doing Plasma. There's probably competing Plasma implementations. I'm looking at you. You have been giving me the best feedback of anyone in the room. Yes, sir. How do you digitize land titles? Oh, chain of titles. Well, with Factom, what we are is we're a pure data play. And anytime you put data inside of Factom, you create your own chain for that purpose, and you put data in that chain, which means that data is relatively easy to enumerate, independent of anything else that happens to be inside of Factom. That's our solution. There are lots of other people building land title solutions on blockchains, and they have different solutions. You can do this with signatures, and you can do this with a lot of other cryptographic attributes that you track across the blockchain. I'm going to grab somebody way in the back. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm a 70s baby too, I remember that.
Yeah.
With that said, what I've been racking my brain with is how your company in what's the guy, McAfee?
Yeah.
Anybody making money? Why is it okay? We didn't have blockchain when the world ceased to exist. So how is it? Why do we? How is this a killer app? Like, okay, if you didn't have it, we still wouldn't do this. We still wouldn't do
Well, why are payments in
blockchain just in general.
in general? Okay. All right. Well, let me riff a little on that and why ICOs are good. Okay? They illustrate a number of ideas that we've never been able to do before. If I were to run a fundraising thing at a low level and I were to hand you like a little piece of paper that said, these are stocks in my little company, there's no possible way that issuance, those are literally securities. I'm just handing out stock certificates, right? There's no way that could be traded worldwide. But ICOs are traded worldwide. EC20 tokens, ERC20, ED20, some set of letters with a number are traded everywhere. They're traded here in the US, they're traded in China, they're traded in Japan. And when I buy some ERC20s out of Zimbabwe, they're good. How? Think about that for a second. When was the last time you would buy something from some random country in a developing world and be comfortable with that? Because the ICOs have cryptographic audits behind them. And with the right laws and the right responsibilities placed on people who are issuing them, you have the possibility of raising enormous amounts of capital at the startup of building technologies, and you are going to fund a lot of innovation and a lot of change. And you're going to do it with cryptographically auditable devices that will respectively make a lot of people rich and put a lot of people in jail. Oh, 5. Okay.
I partly disagree with you because ICO is a great way to raise money for a good idea.
Right.
They are using that as a vehicle, those who cannot go into IPO.
Right.
So there are companies misusing the ICO concept.
Sure. And like I said, lots of people in jail. So the point is, right now we're new. We haven't seen people go to jail yet. And as we start putting some people in jail and praising other people for having done it right, we'll figure out how to do this thing. But keep in mind, it's not like we learn to ride the bicycle the first time we get on it. Exactly. We're going to get some skinned knees and some skinned elbows and a skinned nose and probably a slight concussion. But that's okay. We'll come out of this and it's going to be an incredible thing.
So one question is that there are several applications of blockchain.
Yes.
Why you picked only 3 and what is the rationale?
They only gave me 30 minutes.
So with these major sort of verticals, if you will, of real estate and finance, let's assume in the next year that the killer app has been fully baked and is ready to go and it's basically disrupted these industries. What will we see in terms of changes in the real estate industry? Does it mean we're more selling direct between title owners?
Yeah.
Does it remove the realtors out of it? What are the other implications there? How does it disrupt real estate? How does it disrupt financial institutions?
What I believe is going to happen is the same kind of disruption we've had in hospital administrations and funeral homes over the last 15 years, which is, as we improve the safety of automobiles, we have fewer funerals and we have fewer admissions into hospitals. And so as the blockchain goes in here and creates pervasive and almost impossible to address problems in banking, settlement, and that other category that I had that I can't remember right now, the whole system becomes more efficient and it becomes more honest, and there's fewer misfires, fewer basically roadkill along the road. What's that? Frauds. Fewer frauds. And it's all about one of my favorite things. When you put it in the blockchain, you don't get to change it. So here's the problem. You want to lie, but you don't know what lie you can get away with tomorrow. But you got to go on record today. This makes lying very, very hard. You don't know what lie you want to tell tomorrow today. Therefore, it makes it really, really hard to lie. Lying less is really, really good for all of us. So that doesn't really answer your question, and I get it. But what I think you see is a reduction of all the bad things that we're already seeing. They just kind of go away.
Is perhaps one reason
1 minute.
then, if it takes out a lot of these other things that are happening, could it reduce fees, for example?
Yes.
Banking fees, could it reduce
Yes.
real estate transactions?
Yes. It can reduce fees, Blockchain will reduce fees. It will reduce transaction fees. It'll speed things up. It'll do all kinds of things. And I'm being told I'm out of time. I was also told I had to juggle. Therefore, I juggled. All right. Thank you.